got a question on my Instagram that I thought was really good and I want to take some time to address it. The question was, how does one handle the mental/spiritual negative self-talk when they've failed at eating nutritiously? Now, I know that there are a lot of layers to this question, but I wanted to address it as a bigger picture and then let you guys narrow it down to where you find it to be most appropriate as it relates to you. First off, who am I? My name is Dr. Kazzi. I'm a registered dietitian with an extensive background in nutrition and dietetics. I have a PhD in rehabilitation science. I'm a published author, and I'm here on YouTube to create a nutritionally informed community. So for all of us, food is a sacred ritual that we participate in every single day, and it's the entity by which we give ourselves the gift of energy, we give ourselves sustenance, and of course, pleasure. Food is a universal language. Who doesn't love food? We each personally handpick, purchase, prepare, and feed ourselves these foods. Now, there are foods that only provide empty calories, right? They have no nutritional value. They're created for pleasure only, not for nourishment, and the heavy consumption of which results in inflammation and chronic diseases. These are processed foods. On the other hand, you have food in its whole state, right? You have fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds. You have high quality animal products like high quality dairy, high quality meat. And the trick is with the meats, they need to be minimally processed if you are going to consume them. And so these foods supply us with superior calories. That's where the real nourishment is. That's where the healing is. Now, most of us aspire to eat clean because we understand the correlation between food and disease. Once in a while, though, you might give into a craving. And I think people might miss this. The body does have some resilience to offset the negative effects of occasional moderate indulgence. So perhaps you're out with some friends and they want to stop by this one cafe and enjoy some fresh local apple pie. You're visiting relatives and they offer ice cream with strawberries as a refreshment. You're at the supermarket aisle, and this is where I know it gets pretty hard, and you're looking at that bag of chips and it's just staring at you and asking you to pick it up. What I'm about to say might surprise you. Healthy lifestyle permits unhealthy foods in moderation. Moderation is something that you do once in a while. It's not something you do every day. You might want to put moderation in this space of 1, 2, maybe 3 times a week. You want to put in your mind that 90% of what you eat is genuinely wholesome and nourishing. Now, I wouldn't advise someone who has lactose intolerance to go get a huge milkshake at some fast food place. On the other hand, though, just because beans might be good for one group of people, it doesn't mean it's going to be good for another person who has irritable bowel syndrome. The inflammation resulting from beans with someone who has IBS might be just as, if not more damaging than eating certain processed foods for that person. That being said, I think we all have a healthy awareness of our own bodies and what we can tolerate and what we can't tolerate. For example, when I was 6 or 7, I knew that whenever I went to supplantation with my family, supplantation is like this restaurant/buffet place. Anyways, and they have a really big salad bar, which I love the salad, but whenever I would have the ranch dressing, I would get a headache. And I made that association and I was fully aware of it. And my mother actually reminded me of that recently. And it might have been more of a reaction to MSG since I didn't have dairy issues at the time, but this was interesting to note. So most of us, again, are aware about what our bodies like and what they don't like. And most definitely, bodies are not created equal. Now, back to the negative self-talk. There is no reason to beat yourself up if you allowed yourself to have that piece of chocolate or that handful of cookies. When you beat yourself up too much around food, you begin to create an unhealthy relationship with all things dietary. So in a sense, food becomes a ruler over you rather than you being the ruler over it. Whatever you give permission to dictate your emotions will most definitely result in negative consequences, whether it's going to come in the form of beating yourself up, getting depressed, or feeling like a complete failure. Also, to touch on the spiritual aspect of the question that was asked, your mental health and its relationship with your food is very much like a spiritual thing. We are spirit beings and we're suspended between the mental, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual and the social aspects of our lives. There might be a more deeper issue there if one feels inclined to speak negatively towards themselves in a way that will crush their spirit. And if it comes to the place where it's getting a little bit out of hand, I would definitely recommend seeking therapy to help get to the bottom of where this negative self-talk is really coming from and identify how it managed to manifest itself with food. Because for most, it was never about the food. Again, food is something we actually have control over, but in some cases, trauma from the past that we could not control manifests through the controllability of food because we want so desperately to have controlled that past experience. Eventually, it turns into something pretty complex, and I'm not trying to simplify it and explain it. It's very individualized, and it can become a really layered area for someone who's struggling with it. So in that case, it might be disguised as a dietary issue, masking something much deeper, which is where behavioral science comes in, and it's actually a really big part of diet therapy. So any form of lifestyle change needs to first start with a clean slate, in a sense, a clean emotional state. And the reason is because this produces more sustainable results once the person's on that path. If you don't have that clean slate, it's very easy for that patient or the individual to relapse and go back to their old ways. So if a person is utilizing food as a coping mechanism for some sort of, I don't know, childhood trauma, let's say, the order of therapy should be as follows. So the first thing, connect with a primary care physician who should pick up on this. Most of them will. Orders should then be put out for either psychiatry or a licensed marriage and family therapist or even a counselor, whatever is the most appropriate. And then a physician should remain involved at all times if you have a more serious case that you're dealing with, for example, bulimia or anorexia or things of that sort. And once all that's resolved, you can move forward with diet therapy with a dietitian. And the dietitian must have a full understanding and be completely aware of the patient's history and the patient's progress. So this is going to give the dietitian an emotionally cleaner slate to work with so that both the dietitian and the patient or the individual can hit the ground running with sustainable lifestyle change. For some, it could be a much longer process because of how multi-layered and complex it is. But sometimes even the dietitian will need to pick up on those deeper issues, manage what she can, but then it is important to refer to outside, more qualified resources for further guidance. There's a lot more that can be shared on this topic, but for now, here are 3 simple tips for the more general public to help create a healthier mindset around food. Number 1, always remember to thank God for the food that you have before you. Food is a blessing. It is a gift. It is not something to be fearful of or to be paranoid about. Fear and paranoia, what it does, it's going to steal away the beauty of real food. Whether you believe in God or not, you can still be grateful for it. Prayer has this way of instantly creating an atmosphere of positivity around you and your food. And the reason is because you're exercising the beautiful principle of gratitude. Even if you're having a donut, just be grateful for it. And interestingly enough, there's a significant amount of studies that show that stress can be just as harmful as consuming the processed food itself. So do your part and neutralize some of that inflammatory effect by just enjoying it and being moderate about it. I'm not saying to eat a whole pint of ice cream in one sitting and then to just feel happy about it and it's all going to be good. But I think you get the point, and I do plan to share more about portion control and effective nourishment in the future. Because a lot of the times, part of the reason we crave certain things might be because we may not be getting properly nourished, and that's for another time. Number 2, be aware of when you're full. So a technique that you'll find helpful is that halfway through your meal, like let's say 10 to 15 minutes into the meal, take a good look at your plate and at your dish, and then ask yourself, am I really hungry? Typically about 20 minutes into your meal, your hunger hormones will have turned off. And then revisit the question, am I hungry? Do I want to finish the rest of this? Do not feel obligated to clean your plate. Store it, have it later. And if you're craving something at that point, you can give yourself permission to enjoy like a small treat or something because anyways, you didn't finish your whole meal. This will give you an ease of navigation around your meals, and it puts you back in the driver's seat and it puts your emotions in the back seat. Number 3, exercise and learn the balance and the art of mindfulness and intuitive eating. You can definitely look up a lot of information on intuitive eating, but here's a small summary. Intuitive eating is an eating style that promotes a healthy attitude toward food and one's body image. So you eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full. You tell yourself that you understand that the majority of what you eat is already whole food based and truly nourishing. Therefore, since you are already nourishing yourself properly and would like a fun snack or treat for the day or every other day, that is okay to do. It's this healthy communication with your conscious self. It's you telling yourself that I am the one in control and I understand how to manage this. Again, you then create a stress-free atmosphere around it, and then food will become more of a sacred enjoyment and a recovery period rather than an opportunity for self-sabotage and disdain. I hope you found these tips helpful. You can drop your questions in the comment section below. Feel free to subscribe if you benefited from this content and join the nutritionally informed community. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys again next Monday.